1,000 children are referred to Great Ormond Street's ear, nose and throat department every year. Cody Barrowman, who lives just outside Glasgow, is one of their youngest patients. 1-year-old Cody has an extremely rare condition which has caused a mass of cysts to grow around his neck, mouth and tongue. His mother Cheryl only discovered there was something wrong with him hours before he was born.
I went to hospital and my waters had already broke, but they never really said too much. They just kept asking if my waters had definitely broke. And then they went and got a doctor who came in and said that he could see like a lump on the back of his neck. He couldn't tell me if it was cancerous or how big it was. It was just horrible because we didn't know what was happening, what it was, or how severe it was.
Doctors were concerned Cody might not survive, and Cheryl was rushed to theatre where he was delivered by emergency caesarean.
As soon as he was delivered, he started to cry, so we knew at least that's him, he's made it.
He was crying, it was one of the nicest things I've ever heard. So we knew for then that, didn't know he was going to be okay, but we knew, he's alive and he's crying. And then the paediatric consultant brought him over to let us see him. It was kind of heartbreaking, but we were just glad he was alive.
The growth on Cody's neck was a collection of cysts caused by a rare lymphatic disorder called cystic hygroma. He was referred to Great Ormond Street and put under the care of leading head and neck specialist Ben Hartley. Cody's case was one of the severest he'd ever seen.
In our body we have a number of blood vessels, which are arteries and veins, but we've also got another system, which is the lymphatic system, and that drains clear fluid from around the body up into the neck. And what Cody's been born with is some abnormal lymphatics, which have formed a dense network of cysts really throughout his neck, but also into his mouth and into his tongue. What was done for Cody shortly after birth was a tracheostomy, to place a breathing tube into his neck, and you can see him here with his tracheostomy in place and some quite significant neck swelling. The other thing you can see from this slightly later picture is that his tongue is now starting to push out because it's enlarged, because there's malformation within it, and also because the natural place where it sits is filled with cysts.
Due to the severity of his condition, Cody requires a lot of special care from both his parents. His tracheostomy needs cleaning every day.
Hey, wee man.
As a trauma nurse, Dean is more qualified than most to look after his son.
As soon as you're dealing with your own kid, then, no amount of experience or training's going to prepare you for the first time. Say you change his tracheostomy tube. There, before we change it can get quite difficult.
First time I changed his tracheostomy was in the hospital. Came out and I was shaking and I felt like my heart was beating out my neck, and that was strange at the start.
The tapes are off, you really need to watch what you're doing. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Good boy.
It's not possible to remove this malformation completely, but it is possible to improve the situation. And the Barrowmans felt the biggest problem for Cody at the moment was his tongue, which is sticking out a lot all the time and tending to get injured and bleed. And so the surgery we're planning is to reduce the tongue by taking some of the tongue away. And then underneath the tongue is a dense mass of cysts. So I'm going to take some of those away to try and create more room.
It will be the first of many operations for Cody.
Whatever he can do for him is good for us, As long as he says his aim is to get his tongue back in his mouth and for it to stay there, so that's what we're praying for.
Cody's tongue reduction is set to take place in a week's time. Great Ormond Street sees 10 new patients a year who suffer from a rare condition called cystic hygroma. One of these children is 1-year-old Cody Barrowman. A malformation of his lymphatic system has left Cody with a mass of cysts in his neck and facial area, causing major swelling. Today he's here for an operation to reduce his protruding tongue, which has become seriously infected. His consultant Ben Hartley will also attempt to remove some of the cysts in his mouth.
The biggest problem when we talked before was the tongue coming out and bleeding, so we're going to deal with that first. And so we're going to make the tongue smaller by taking essentially a piece from the front and then putting some stitches in.
You operating on his tongue, is that going to destroy the cysts that are inside his tongue?
The bit that's left will still have some cysts in it, and the aim is not to remove all the cystic areas, but try to reduce the bulky problem to get his tongue back in his mouth. We also do it in a way that we try and preserve the tip of the tongue. And the children who've had this operation have had good speech, particularly those tongue tip sounds. So with this operation, fortunately, we haven't had speech problems.
If Cody's tongue reconstruction goes well, he should start to catch up with children his own age. Right now, he struggles to make baby noises, and he can't eat, so he has to be fed by a tube. The enormity of the situation is dawning on Cody's parents.
Starting to get a bit nervous. He's only ever really had surgery for his tracheostomy when he was 3 days old. The other times he went to theatre was for injections. So this is his first real surgery, so we're a bit nervous.
I think it's very difficult for the parents, but they cope remarkably well. The parents never stop surprising me how well they cope with the most extreme problems.
The operation could take up to 2 hours. All Cheryl and Dean can do now is wait.
I'm going to pass this special camera down.
Before the operation begins, Mr. Hartley checks Cody's throat and windpipe with a surgical camera.
And we can see quite a lot of cystic swelling in the tonsil area.
The mass of white cysts shows the severity of Cody's condition. In a healthy child, the area would look smooth and pink.
Now we're going down into his airway, into his larynx.
His windpipe has become extremely narrow due to the weight and pressure of the cysts.
So, pretty much as I suspected, there's quite a lot of cysts down there, but also a reasonable passage. Okay.
Today, Mr. Hartley will be focusing on the cysts in Cody's mouth. He's hoping to remove enough of them to make space for his tongue.
So the first thing I do is to try and identify his submandibular ducts, which carry the saliva. I have a 2/0 silk suture to put on this duct there. So once I've identified the duct, we can start to remove some cysts, which Cody really has got a lot of.
The cysts are buried in the flesh beneath Cody's tongue. Mr. Hartley will need to make a large incision to remove them.
Can I have a laundry clip, please? So we've, on one side, created quite a big space here, a hollow, where I've removed cysts, and that creates more space for his tongue to sit in. I'm going to create a similar space the other side, and then we're going to remove some of the tongue itself. So if I could just put an adrenaline, I'll use this adrenaline patty, pop it in there.
An hour into surgery, Mr. Hartley has hollowed out both sides and is ready to start working on Cody's tongue.
We're going to take a V-shaped wedge from the front of the tongue to shorten it, but not too much. And something like that will shorten his tongue by maybe 1 centimetre to come round there. I'm just going to mark.
If this delicate part of the operation goes well, it will have a major impact on Cody's speech development.
It has potential to affect the way he speaks, but I think the reality is with the tongue as it is at the moment, he's inevitably going to have difficulty with pronunciation of certain sounds, so one hopes that we can improve it rather than make it worse by giving him a tongue that fits inside his mouth.
Mr. Hartley uses a laser device to cut Cody's tongue.
Laser controls bleeding as it cuts. The reason we use a laser is areas where there's a lot of blood supply. So So now you can see that we've taken a piece of the tongue away, and I'm going to join these two parts together to give him a reasonably, hopefully normally looking, but shorter and smaller tongue. It's going to be pretty sore, but he should be able to be managed with our regular oral painkillers that we use. He certainly got a much better tongue position now than he had when we started this afternoon.
The operation's complete. Cheryl and Dean have been called to the recovery room to comfort Cody. Although he still has a large amount of cysts left, Mr. Hartley is confident his tongue reconstruction will make a huge difference to his life.
Got some antibiotics for a few days, just to stop it getting infected. And I'm making an appointment.
It's been a week since Cody's tongue reduction surgery, and today he's finally being discharged.
Okay. Good. All right, all the best. Okay, see you in 4 weeks. Okay, bye-bye. He's got all the swelling that we expected, and his face is swollen up, and his tongue is swollen up, and that will go down over the next few weeks. But he's relatively comfortable with it, and we're making arrangements for him to leave hospital today. There's 2 more steps to take. To get his tracheostomy out is going to involve some surgery at the back of his tongue and taking his tonsils out probably, because they're full of cysts, to create more space at the back there for breathing. The other thing is quite significant tracheal compression from the weight of the cyst in his neck, and I think it's likely we're going to have to remove the bulk of that from his neck, both to help with his getting his tracheostomy out and also with a cosmetic effect.
Cody still has a lot of treatment ahead of him, but it's a relief for his parents he's made it this far.
For what he's been through, he's happy, he's good-natured. He only cries when he's hungry or tired, so that's good, because everything he's been through, you think he'd be quite grumpy, but he's not. He's a happy child.
Once the swelling in Cody's mouth has gone down, he'll be back at Great Ormond Street for a checkup with Mr. Hartley. It's been a month since surgeons reduced 1-year-old Cody's tongue. Today he's back at Great Ormond Street for a checkup with consultant Ben Hartley.
Very good. Actually, I think it's healing beautifully. Okay, I think there's more. It's still a bit swollen. Okay, I think there's more improvement to come. I think the next step is really to work on Cody's feeding, because I think what we've got is, he's been tube feeding for so long. He's never really learnt how to feed.
Yeah.
One step at a time, and you can see it happening. Wicked smile, haven't you? Yes, you have. You've got a wicked smile. Well, very nice to see you, Cody.
Saying bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Take care. Thanks for coming down. Thanks for bringing me all this way just for 5 minutes. Okay. All right. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. I feel positive about Cody. I think we would like to get both his tubes out, and I think we'll achieve that. I think cosmetically we can certainly improve the bulk. Whether he'll ever really look truly normal, I think it's difficult to predict, but we can certainly make him look a lot better than he does at the moment.
6 months ago, things weren't progressing along too well, and the future didn't look that good. But now things are looking really positive. Feeling great, actually. Really pleased with what Mr. Hartley was saying. Quite positive. He's pleased with the result Cody's had for his tongue reduction. Going to try and get his feeding sorted out now and push him to eat a wee bit more. Overall, we're over the moon. Really pleased.
Cody will have to undergo more surgery in the future, but his tongue now sits much more easily in his mouth, and he's making good progress.